Are you walking?
Yes.
You're gonna hold your phone up or your computer up, or did you
No,
get it?
yeah, I put my phone in the place where it like gets reception.
Nice.
Um, and it was, I'll tell you what it was. So what were we at with my Explorer.net? What did I say?
You were saying, I think you said, was it one or 3 in 1 or 3 in
No, it was point 0.6.
point
Oh,
six?
yeah. So this is beautiful beautiful. It was 7 and like 1 point something. So we'll be better. And our lag right now isn't even as great as it was. So
Yeah, I didn't really notice. It seemed like it was real time, but I guess I don't know.
yeah. Cool. All right. So this is our first episode, the first episode of Pints with Pastor. And we are here with Ryan Elkanah. And so here's the thing. I don't know if, because this is the first one, you can help me out with all of this. Um, I'm not sure if like I should introduce the person or if the person should introduce themselves. That's something that I'm always kind of uh, kind of wondering about.
Yeah, I
Any
don't know.
traditions we can figure out?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, I'm good with either personally.
Okay. Well, so here's the next question for you.
Yeah.
Because like you had a last name change. How was that? Like, did you have a hard time like pronouncing it or
My old last name or the current one?
the Elkanah? Yeah.
I have no issue with pronouncing Elkanah, but
Was it
people had.
weird though?
Was it weird
Trying
changing
to
my
get
last? Well,
yeah, trying to like get through it or
my previous last name was Russell Timbrell, so it was already a mouthful, and nobody knew how to say that, anyways. So, but trying to change it, no, it wasn't an issue at all for me.
it was good?
Just all the steps. There was lots, like you had to get fingerprinting. You have to redo like all your marriage certificate, your birth certificate, like all the government stuff needs to be redone.
Yeah.
But I like it. I'm okay, and I kind of like that it's different uh, than what's out there. So
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Okay. Well, uh, this is none of this is getting cut. Like right from the beginning, me walking, and if dogs bark or kids scream, like on my end, that's just what's gonna play out. I guess if it
that's
gets too bad, we might have to pause it. But like, hopefully, the pastor's house doesn't get too chaotic on that front. But we'll see how it goes. Anyway, with being the Pints with the Pastor, we are opening a beverage, and then we are kind of talking about it. It could be a favorite. It could be just what you have on hand. It could be something that you use in the morning or evening to get you motivated. Not sure what it is, but what are you drinking? And then I'll tell you what I'm drinking, and we'll go from
I'm
there.
I'm I'm sure yours is quite fancier. I got Innocent Gun.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
How would you
Uh,
describe it? What is it?
so
Yeah.
when I'm not like a beer drinker at all, or like, and so I only really know this one because my friend Laura, uh, I think brought it or gave it, and I just kind of stuck with it. I used to drink like Molson Canadian before that, or just like regular
Oh,
whatever out
you're
there.
hurting my heart. That's okay.
I'm probably the worst person to like start this off because I'm not a connoisseur of beer or liquor really. Um,
Hey,
yeah, I
it doesn't have to be any of those. It could be coffee and tea, or even like the difference between like whole milk and zero point 0.5 milk.
mhm.
I'm good with all that. Anyway, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying it's just leftover from my birthday because I don't store liquor in my fridge usually
Gotcha.
because yeah.
Is it tasty or like
Oh yeah, I like it. It's got like an amber taste to it, I guess.
yeah,
I don't know.
good.
What would those be called?
I think it's a mix between, yes, probably the a traditional, which is an amber, but
Mhm.
then there should be a little bit of Scottish notes in there. So some sort of like, I don't know if it's like the peat or I don't know if it's like the barrels or whatever. Should be something kind of there, like funky.
Yeah, because like all beer used to taste the same to me,
Mm,
and so I'm trying to, I don't know, explore that a little bit.
gotcha. Perfect. Well, so here for me, I've
Mhm.
got the Potluck XPA. I've never tried this before, ever. I don't
Okay.
know if I'm allowed to show it. Like, would that mess anything up legally? You know,
I
with
don't think
Church of
so.
God is what I'm saying.
Oh,
No, I'm totally. I don't know.
I I
Yeah,
don't know what the rules are.
neither do I. Anyway, so best of kin, bonded by beer, brewed in Calgary, Alberta. Um, don't know. I really don't know what I'm, but it's a XPA, so like an IPA, but a little different. Uh, and so I haven't even tasted it. This is the first, right?
Like that, your glass.
Thanks, man. It smells almost like a imperial, right?
Okay,
Okay, just this is my, yeah, for sure.
sure.
And taste a little bit. So your XPA, like obviously that's probably double IPA, but sometimes the double IPA can be a lot more juicier. But
Hmm.
Imperial IPA sometimes has like more like a caramel, like it's darker hops at the beginning. It feels like, or malts or whatever at the beginning. It's
So, how did you find this beer? Did you get it from some guy in a trench coat in an alley or something? Or
yes, that's how I get all of my alcohol.
well, you just
Is
made it sound like it was like appeared out of thin air, and
it's
you're
in
like,
a
oh, I guess
van
I'll
down by
drink
the
it.
river. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. No, this is from a Bragg Creek local wine and spirit store, and they have a pretty good selection of craft beers. And yeah, this is. I think I need to let it warm up a little bit, like come down to room temperature. But
Hmm.
it seems like a fine XPA. So anyway, enough about
Sweet.
that. So it's not my regular go-to. It's a new one, but that's kind of what we've been been shooting for. Anyway, so even though we've had lots of conversations and we know each other and so on and so forth, I may ask a bunch of questions that you're like, well, you know this or whatever. But this is
Okay.
all part of just kind of exploring who we are, you know, and kind of what's next, and you know, just kind of telling your story a little bit. It's just a new way of telling your story, I think, in these ridiculous times, and we are all trying to kind of figure out how to kind of get through what is some new patterns in our own life. So
Hmm.
um, anyway, so I think what we always would like to like start us off with is really around kind of like, you know, how did you get here in Bragg Creek? Like a little bit of your backstory, you know, what brought you into the community, and the kind of the journey toward that.
Okay.
Yeah.
What brought me here and how long I've been. So, how far back should I go? Should I like?
As far back as you want to go. That's
Oh, I'm good with whatever. I just
I'll ask
uh
some questions if yeah,
okay.
wherever you start. Yeah.
Well, the first time uh Bragg Creek became part of my life was when I started going with the youth worker at the church who was connecting with me in the city. She's like, you should come to youth. And so then
I think you can say her name, by the way.
Okay. I don't know why I made the habit. Yeah, Melissa.
It's okay. Yeah, first names are
Invited
fine.
me, and yeah, went to youth. I'm trying to think what else. My Bragg Creek. And then I left for a long time. But I've always felt.
What did you do when you left?
What did I do when I left?
Yeah.
Well, I felt like. Well, I went to Life Teams, which is a school about. It's about training. It's about discipleship training, and which discipleship is like walking alongside people, talking about Jesus, that type of thing. I just don't want to be like Christianese and like throwing out words out there. But basically, I was learning to be a youth worker, similar to how Melissa was a youth worker for me, and bringing that back to Calgary. And then did that for 10 years, but I'm trying to think when I went back to Bragg Creek. I don't know. You've had secret plans for Leanne and I, my wife, who also was in that youth group. And and so now I live at a house by the river in Bragg Creek, which blows my mind. And at first I'm like a bit like I love the city. I love being able to get a Slurpee at like 3 a.m. or like go and, get whatever I want. Like I miss the fact that we don't have to skip the dishes or anything. Like everyone's talking about how amazing that is. And I'm like, I would love to have a pizza come right now, but it's part of the sacrifice. And then the internet problems too. But anyways, like so I've been living here for 3 years. Yeah, it's not best way of like explaining my story. But
so would you say that the youth group initially gave you that taste, and then then your wife kind of reeled you in eventually at some point to say, hey, country life is okay?
I think the reason I like living here now is that it does make my wife happy because she grew up here. And my dog happy. My dog loves it out here because we used to when we first started marriage, we lived in.
What's your dog's name?
Zoe.
Nice.
She's a purebred German Shepherd. I've had her for 4 years. I don't know. I lost track of time. What was I saying? I lost my train of thought.
You're talking about moving back because Leanne enjoyed.
Oh yeah. So it was. I'm kind of good to live wherever, and I haven't. But then, and up until recently, like just realizing how much this place has become home, the church has become home, the community has become home, and I actually really like living out here, and hope that continues. But who knows? Like I'm do whatever, but for now I'm going to enjoy it. So, yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Living down by the river, do I get my liquor from you then? You're the van down by the river that I...
You're not supposed to tell anybody.
Oh, sorry. My bad. Yeah, absolutely. So what do you like? Terrible internet. We've got slushies, non 24-hour slushies.
Yeah.
No pizza delivery. There's some pizza pickup right now. I think everything's kind of pickup right now, dealing with where we're at. What do you like about the community? What are some of the things that like you feel like, you know what, this is like I can kind of get into this. This is all right.
I think for everybody, it's the element of like the physical community itself, not like the people, but like when I talk about is like the retreat aspect. Like I'm leaving the busyness of everything. I'm coming in and now I can rest. This place has been a place of rest and healing with a lot of what's been going on in my life. And so that's also part of why I have a fondness for this place. It You do get seen and known in a small town, so even if people don't, I've never met them, they seem to know who I am. Same with church. I struggle with remembering people sometimes, but everyone knows who I am because I'm this giant dude. So, easy name to remember. Um, I don't know. You can go for walks. It's not my thing, but some people like it. And active stuff. Um, yeah, I guess it just feels like a retreat. So I like it. Yeah.
Perfect. Very perfect. I would say it does. It's funny how you're kind of, talking about like how small town feel, like people actually get to, like, they know you and all that stuff. And I completely agree. Like there's a part of that that's, really nice. I grew up in a small town, went to a bigger city, and bigger churches and all of those things, and then came back to this, and it was a little bit of a breath of fresh air. But it's also funny, like when you do go down to the grocery store, that people do know you,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit different where you're trying to kind of manage just getting in and out and going this next place, right? Rather than kind of talking with absolutely everybody. So yeah, it's we're I think we come on different ends a little bit on that, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, probably true.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Um, so when it comes to your life and kind of like your passions and where uh you God has taken you, the things that you've kind of committed yourself to, what are the things that really make you feel inspired? What are the things that make you the best self, kind of stuff, like when you're like, man, i feel like I feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing at this moment, or I feel like I'm even growing at this, even if you're like, I don't feel like I'm doing like my best at this, but I feel like I'm being stretched and pulled to the places where I'm supposed to be. What would some of that be for you?
Like right now or just
In general, even
in
like
general?
you can start at the beginning, like kind of what took you to life teams, like why that was important to you, and then also what came after.
Yeah, well, that's a long journey and story. I feel like if you were to ask that question before, like I left my job last October, I would have said that I'm right where I'm supposed to be. I'm like gung ho and excited. Uh, and now I don't know if it's necessarily about that anymore, where I feel like I need to be a certain place, as I've learned that my faith and where I stand with God was based on my circumstance and feelings. So if things were going well and I'm doing ministry and I'm serving people and I'm doing, then we're good. And if not, then the opposite of that is true. And uh, I don't think that's true, especially for me anymore. So that's been really good. The things that inspire me or bring my heart to life, like when I get down to it, if I say like, why do I want to help people? I think in the way that I've been made and created, I'm somebody who um, really just wants people to experience the same freedoms that I have in just all areas of life. Because I'm just like, I wish people could be in this place where I'm at with like my relationship with God and just feeling like I've got like peace and joy, and I feel like I'm actually loved and cared about, which were big struggles in my life. Um,
What like why would you say that like some of those were bigger struggles in your life? Like where did some of those come from?
well, I grew up in foster care. Since the age of 7, I was in foster care until I was 19. Lived with different people. And so I was always left with a feeling. And then also, I have ADHD, which is probably why I have difficulty doing eye contact or I'm moving around. And I hope that's okay for people. But like, um, what all of these things ended up telling me in my life is that I have I had no value, that I'm only as good as if I can be what other people want to be. And there's this like desperation to be like everyone else, because if I was like everyone else, like if I could think like everyone else and act like everyone else, because school is a struggle. I have no friends. uh I I'm just terrible at getting focusing and doing stuff. I don't know. There's all these things that just made me feel like I was stupid. I mean, I grew up in in foster care, and so like this feeling of like someone didn't think I was worth the effort to like. I mean, that was when I was younger, but of loving. And same with the foster parents that I grew up with. They all kicked me out eventually, like after 3 years, 3 4 years. No, I mean, I wasn't the best either, but what it ended up reinforcing and telling me was like, unless you change, there is no value. And it it's taken me a very long time to be in a place where I actually like and love who I am, um, which in turn has transformed the way that I extend that to others, which is phenomenally amazing. Um, yeah, I don't know.
Can, can I ask you a question? So
Sure.
when you began to like one be diagnosed with ADHD and that and like uh was that something that was like a relief to you? Like, man, this
Mhm.
answers so many questions, or it was like I'm broken? Because like I know for me when I went through like the process, being tested on learning disabilities and all of those things,
Mhm.
um, and through that whole thing, there were some markers that were like, oh, like this makes so much more sense to me, um, then and it helps me just like formulate the world.
Mhm.
Um, but I know for other people, it just piles on like, well, I've got dyslexia. That's ugh, like whatever. That's something that's broken in one more thing that's broken, right? So
Sure.
I mean, how was it with you, like in that whole process? When did you kind of like find out, and like what was it, a good
Well,
thing or a bad thing, or how was it managed?
oh, it's a difficult question to answer because it's changed. When I was younger, the reason I found out, or the way I found out, I lived at the Children's Hospital for like 2 years. And what that ended up telling me was that something was wrong with me, because everyone's like trying to test and figure out like, why is Ryan act this way or do this. Um, but at the same time, knowing that I had ADHD also allowed me to be equipped to kind of walk through life with like, I don't know. I feel like there are people who don't know it until like way later, and then they're like, oh my goodness. Like, no, I've known for a while, but I would also say back then I don't even feel like I was aware that I existed, if that even makes sense. Yeah, it, it that didn't seem to happen until I left Life Teams, the school I went to. I felt like I was asleep before then with life, like I was just living and trying to stay alive. Um, Now though, with the ADHD and stuff, the thing that's difficult is like trying to determine. I'm learning that a lot of people, even if I didn't have the trauma that I experienced, I would have had some of the same struggles, the same difficulties in certain areas. And so now I'm like, okay, is this trauma? Is this personality? Is this the ADHD? What can I change? What can I work on? Um, what can I won't say fix, because I've also come to a place where I've come to realize that what the way my brain works, the way that I think and operate, the world needs more of, and so I'm kind of okay with where I'm at, but it's still, there are so many little frustrating things that still will come up, and I'm just like, sometimes I wish it was like, I wish I knew what it was like to be normal. But I don't know. I am thankful that I did learn and have been able to learn and navigate and figure this out. And even taking, I started taking medication again, which has been really helpful. It feels like I can now focus. All the energy that I spent trying to focus is now able to be focused on other things, which is amazing. It feels like I'm cheating in life. It's like everyone can do this.
This is the
Yeah.
normal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
But then I've also got like a lifetime of like working so hard to stay focused and do stuff. So now it's just like I can like get it done.
Yeah.
Sometimes depends.
So let's go back just a little bit. You were talking about
Sure.
like pre-life team stuff. You're kind of feeling just trying to exist, like, or feeling very gray, or kind of dead. However, there must have been like little spikes because you came to youth group and something happened there that obviously was like moving you to like, what is this all about? Maybe talk a little bit about that, and then obviously like
Sorry.
when you go through life teams, like what was it that like started to like form in you that ended up changing kind of post and pre?
Sure. So I think for a lot of, in my teenage years, I moved to a foster home with like 5, 6 other guys at the same time. And so I had guardians, but I never had parents. In part of probably, I say being a teenager is one of the hardest things you do, because you're trying to like figure out who you are, and uh, all these different things coming at you. And then anyways, I didn't
Teenagers.
have,
It's teenagers.
yeah, exactly.
That's what it is.
Yeah. And so I didn't have a guardian. And so then when Melissa connected with me, that was like, you talk about those spikes or those things that kind of got me through it, was somebody actually caring about me and where I'm at. And then not only caring, but like seeing beyond where I was at. Like they could see, Melissa, it seemed like she could see something that, I mean, I'm still in the middle of discovering for way back then. And then like seeing that thing, that treasure, whatever, and like pushing for it and trying to build into it and trying to, I think that was something that got me through that unconditional love, which I feel like hadn't experienced before. And that's not because people hadn't offered it. Well, it's hard because I feel like I'm the gatekeeper of it. I have so much trauma, so much stuff that's happened, that I'm very picky about who I let in and who I let love me. And then even myself, like I don't think I'm worthy of or I didn't think I was worthy of those thoughts or feelings.
But just one second, like, let's be
Yeah.
honest, like, uh, did like that moves me a whole bunch. Like the fact that you have one person who is like, I I see something like beautiful, and I'm gonna like really push for it in you. Like I think you can achieve it.
Hmm.
Like that's the hope that I think we have in general. Like just even the one engagement that like we end up spending serious time with, where like we're saying no, like your life is like worth so much more, and we see so many treasures here, and like just not willing to give up. Like that is there's a beautiful picture of the gospel of just like I see
Hmm.
you and you are valued and there's things about you and I'm not gonna let you go. Like those that's a beautiful example. Like she was definitely like a beautiful picture of what it means to like say, you know what, like we're hanging on to this. And wow, that's
Yeah,
exciting to hear you say that. It really
that's
is,
awesome.
for sure.
Yeah, it's definitely meant, so like I owe, yeah, Melissa. And not just Melissa, but there are other people who played roles in my life who, I think that's one of the reasons why, was there were always people who seemed to, even just a little bit, being part of that journey. Melissa was just like the catalyst of
Sure.
like being a part of it, but there was always like, a teacher that would be more than a teacher, who would connect with me outside
Yeah.
of class. And or I remember this, I was in foster care, and this lady who I don't even remember or whatever, she used to take us to church and talk to us, and I honestly don't know who she is or remember her any. I just remember that action. But there were like always different people. um like I owe so much to the people around me who have fought for me when I didn't feel like I was able to do that myself. Like I didn't think anything of myself,
Yeah.
but they seemed to for some reason. I had a caseworker who, uh, when you leave foster care, you go into transitional living, hopefully, so you can learn. They don't just boot you out and say, "All right, go live your life," but they actually bring you a place where you learn life skills and other stuff. But I had a key worker there, and I felt like he was more than just the role of like what he was supposed to do, but he was like a mentor and a guide, and it was somebody who saw beyond what was being presented, as I like to say to people. So, yeah, there, I, uh, I can look back, and I'm thankful for the people who do that, for sure,
Yeah.
who have done that.
And a picture of grace all the way through, you know, like even when, you know, you just have people who are like I doubt all of your crew was like Jesus followers or any of that stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, there's enough wiring within us of like, hey, you know, justice means something to me, or you know, there's like redemption, like possibility, like all these. There's something that calls me to like participate in these jobs, to spend the extra time with a person, um, not for reward, but because it actually deep inside my soul, it's like this is the thing that actually is of value. Like this is the thing that actually brings life and life to the full, right? Like, um, and we're wired to like have our antennas to like be, you know, pointing in that direction, whether we're like saying Jesus is Lord or not, or any of those things.
Yeah.
It is beautiful to see that take place, right?
One of the difficulties I had was I didn't see it that way. I used to think it was more like in order for Ryan to succeed, people need to come down to my level and then carry me along to make it work. But what I missed was like, well, why would they do that? It's taken me so many years to figure that out, of like, because I'm worth it, because I'm, you know, uh, but for me it was like, oh, like if they don't, then like I'm just a burden to people around, right? In order, which is, yeah, it's been a difficult thing to figure out, but it's been good.
Well, so then let's go on to like you figuring some of that out. Like you go into life teams, you go through like this fairly intensive year or whatever. I'm not sure I'm not sure what it is of uh, throwing you into uncomfortable situation after uncomfortable situation,
Hmm.
um, and you know, like how has that like shaped your identity, or been kind of the process of all of that as well?
I think for some of the biggest things I learned from life teams was, well, there was the one thing where I felt like I was just asleep until I went, and then suddenly it was like, this is the possibility of what a faith in with Jesus lived out could look like. Before then, it was like I was really excited about it, but I didn't understand. For me, it was more of like a means to an end, or a crutch, or I don't know. Uh, where there it became more so like personal, and also like learning. For me, going there, I learned that, like, I went to life teams, which is a school about training youth workers and discipleship and all this other stuff. I went there not wanting to be a youth worker at all. I didn't care about that. I really wanted to work with like the vulnerable population of people, like homeless adults and stuff like that. And then by the end, I learned that I really had a heart for young people and teenagers and people that were in my same situation. Now I could help them in their journey. Um, and so I guess it awakened, or not awakened, but it revealed something that was already there, but I could see it now. Um, which is, I cared deeply for people, but like I'm also really good at it and I'm passionate about it. And yeah, I don't know. So
It's interesting because that kind of moves to the next question of like, you know, maybe it's not the most important thing that you've learned in your life, because like I think vocational calling is something that's it's up there. Like it's, you know, it's something that we want to take really, really seriously, you know, and finding the nuances of like, oh, I think I like this, but then is there something really specific in this that like, or am I willing to be open enough to, you know, turn the corner and go different directions? That's definitely something that's of value. Um,
mhm.
but I mean, in total, when you start to like compress all of this stuff up, um, and even then, you know, obviously we've got like we've got youth group stuff, we've got life team stuff, we come back, you fall in love, weird, you know,
It
all of
is
that
actually
stuff.
kind of weird considering my personality and everything else, but yeah.
All of that stuff. Uh, and then, you know, you're starting to kind of even uh, move into an organization that's like helping you like uh, move that direction and everything. When you start to like compress all of that, like what are some of the you know most important things you've learned about your life? Like what are some of those like life lessons of like, oh, this was significant, I was here and this brought me to here.
So That's so many things. I could talk about my journey with working at YFC, which I worked for 10 years, and why I did it. I could talk about uh, recently, well, not recently, it's been a little bit, but I went through like 3 years of depression, anxiety, battling through that and navigating that and figuring that out. And then the lessons and the things I learned through that time and after. I could talk about what I've learned not working at YFC on the other side. Uh,
Well,
I don't know.
okay. So
There's so many
let me
things.
focus a bit. I would say if if we were to like look at uh so I would say 3 years of kind of wrestling through depression and all of that.
Mhm.
Um and figuring out like how do I like what are my manage like how do I manage this? How do I keep everything in its place? And then the insights that really kind of maybe pushed me to help me to say, you know what, I can do this. Like, what would be some of those things there?
Well, it's actually quite interesting because I think I don't not, and I'm not saying the things that were caused or the time that was caused was by God. However, maybe it was um, the with anyways. But I've
let's get into the theology of that. Let's
yeah, we could. Uh, the whole thing started, I think, when I prayed that I would know that I'm loved. And when I say that, I don't mean like oh I know like knowledge in my head, you know. But like for some reason there's like this disconnect. Something was blocking me from understanding that in my heart, which is really hard to explain. Like for example, I used to go to church and I would step in there and see all these people with their hands in the air singing, doing their stuff. And they seemed to understand that they were loved by God and that they were loved in general. And I didn't get it. It didn't make sense. It didn't connect. And uh, it made me feel like outsider and I didn't belong. So I think this 3 years of depression, um, that time was used to answer that prayer.
Hmm.
Uh, I could get into the theology of it, but um, so the things I learned initially was that, first of all, that I'm lovable. I used to look at myself. One of the things I realized is like I other people see me differently than I see myself, and what are they seeing? Like, I used to didn't think very fondly of who I was, so that I'm lovable. Like that's why people are doing things. That's why I had Melissa and other people in my life because there was something worth loving there. Uh, to that I'm actually loved. Um, so like my wife and people around me, yourself, they actually love me. So then finally, not that I actually was in the way of receiving that. Like I had been blocking that for a long time. I remember it might sound really silly to people who haven't had a aren't Christians or whatever, but I saw a picture, or I feel like God showed me a picture of a giant castle, and I was standing in the drawbridge area, and Jesus is standing there, and he's like like love people every like this. We're trying to get in. You're standing in the way. You've been standing in the way for entire life, and it's time to get out of the way, like actually let people love and care for you. And I don't mean just like in your head, but like taking
Mm-hmm.
it and internalizing, like, and so yeah, that's been a hard journey. um I think ministry was uh the reason I
Hang on 1 second.
okay, go ahead.
Just so,
Sure.
just going back then, like receiving love was like an ability to say, you know what, um, I'm like, I'm like, God's made me into who I am, and it's okay if people actually like truly love me,
Yeah.
and I need to open my life up to that. Okay, I just wanted to kind of like,
Sure.
for like, if I'm hearing you correctly,
Ult-
that's kind of what you were saying, right?
Ultimately, the thing that I had learned from God himself is like, I love you, so it really doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if what you think, what other people think.
Sure.
uh but I'm the one, like, I created you, I made you, I love who you, like you.
Yeah.
uh you could choose to believe that or not, but it's truth, I guess. And so I guess uh now trying to live in that and figure what that looks like. But sorry. um
And then you came out of, like, you were talking about like coming out of that,
yeah.
or recognizing that as a thing, and then you're moving on to your next one. I
Well,
interrupted, which I'm sure I'm good at, is
no,
interrupting.
it's okay. It's good to like dig in a little bit or to clarify or whatever, because I have my language, but people might not understand. Anyways, um, so the reason I come to, I learned that I come to, uh, I've been doing youth work for 10 years in inner city in Calgary with homeless and at-risk teens. And some of the more difficult things that I've been analyzing and trying to figure out is why did I do that? When I really get down to it, it was like I realized that this thing that had happened to me, I couldn't let it go to waste. Like
Mm.
this trauma that existed, it needed to have meaning, needed to have some sort of destiny behind it. And so, I mean, that was one of the reasons. There's other reasons why, but uh, and so I went and I served people, feeling like if I didn't, then things that happened to me were a waste. And um, that's where I got my value
Mm.
uh, in who I was. And then I went through 3 years of depression where I could literally not even get out of my bed, and God still said, I love you. And my wife still said, I love you. And the people, because I had to fundraise my support and my salary, they kept supporting me. And I didn't get fired from my job miraculously. And I was okay.
Mm.
Even though I didn't do ministry, even though I didn't serve God, even though I didn't help people, I was still loved. And that, I think, broke me, because it was such a, if I just do things, uh, if I do good, if I can say, hey everyone, I've been doing this stuff, so I have a value to be around, to stick, But what if that was still true and I didn't have to do anything? That's the thing
Mm-hmm.
that is so difficult to wrestle with. Um, uh, on the flip side, I like to help people because it's part of who I am. Uh, I don't want to just like entirely be like, yeah, it was this negative, uh, like selfish thing.
Okay, can I interrupt one more time?
Sure.
Because I don't want to let it go to waste.
Mhm.
I mean, what you're dealing, like, if I'm hearing you correctly, if
Sure.
what you're saying, like we're seeing like multiple levels of the same thing, right? Like I'm finally opening myself up, you know, and I can be loved, you know, just for who I am. But then you go on a not a rampage, you go on a beautiful, like, hey, I'm gonna help other people. We're going that direction, but your identity becomes attached to kind of what you do. Like, well,
Yep.
this is what I'm doing, so it makes me that gives me value. And then what happens, you kind of lose some of the underlying just intrinsic value of what you learned before. You've taken steps forward to that, but then when you go through depression, where then you're saying, hey, I'm incapable of doing all the things that people are expecting of me, and I'm still told I'm loved, people are still supporting me, I'm not fired, like all of these things that like are benchmarks that, you know, the world and society says like this gives you value, this gives you purpose. You're saying like all those were stripped away,
Yep.
and yet you received like a beautiful picture of like, no, like just who you are in and of itself, like we like fully like love you, we are behind you, you know, all of that. um like I don't want to move on to the next thing right away. Like that in itself is like a high mark of, you know, whatever this thing is. If for our first episode, I don't know if we're gonna beat it. Like this is the high mark of what it is to say, listen, like we attach so much to this, the external stuff of our life, the doing parts of our life, that we forget that no, like just who we are as people, our intrinsic value is of tremendous worth, right? And that's a lesson that I think we can all like think about and really consider, even in our
Journal.
like in our own lives. Yeah, even now, like when work is on hold for a bunch of people, when we are just wandering around like zombies in our houses because we can't go out, like all of the things that we've really held on to have been stripped away. That's a tremendous lesson that we should be looking at. So thank you for that, and it's good.
Sure. It's
uh,
taken me and God many years. It's not just like here you go and it's done. It wasn't fun.
yeah,
It wasn't easy, but it
sure,
was
but that's the
worth it.
mess of life. I mean, that is
Sure.
life, right? Like that is this crazy beautiful mess we live in. Like this is what it is. Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. No, that's good. And now I interrupted you and I forget where you were going.
That's okay.
That's cool. Yeah, I think you were going on to kind of the post, kind of
Post, yeah.
the next step of your life here.
So I left my job over 10 years because I realized that for me, I could work there the rest of my life and I would be fine and everyone would look at me and be like, Ryan's helping homeless kids. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. But I would be a fraud in the sense that it almost was like I was settling and I was doing what was safe and comfortable because I feel like I'm capable of more and I'm afraid of it. I feel like God wants to do more and I'm afraid of it. I would be okay with just, but then God's like, well, it's not actually important that you're serving homeless kids. Like, it's good. Like, don't get me wrong, Ryan, it's good. But what's more important is where your heart is at and how what's taking place, like the transformation that I want to do, the work that I want to do. It's more important, but I mean, it's if you want that or not, you know. So I left because I felt like I quit fighting. And it's interesting because you suddenly, like, we feel like we're supposed to go to mountains, like we're supposed to ascend to a peak, and then once we get there we think like we've arrived, and suddenly it didn't matter that it almost was like I was forgotten overnight. uh and life went on. It didn't matter that, you know, I mean, I'm not saying the work I did or anything was wasted. It just like it wasn't, I thought it was more valuable than it actually was, or gave me more valuable, more worth, more whatever, purpose, meaning. Uh, and suddenly now I'm faced with the question of like, so then what am I going to do with the rest of my life? I'm turning 30 and I thought I figured it out. And that's really scary. I imagine a lot of people are experiencing that right now, and as they've possibly lost their jobs or things, they're forced at home and life still goes on and they're still okay. And I don't know. So I guess I'm on a journey of, right now I think I'm in a season of that I'm supposed to rest in this, like you're loved not because of what you do but who you are season, outside of doing things. And now if I do them, they aren't motivated by that, but because it's who I am and what I like to do, and because I want to, well, side thing, like let God direct my strengths right now, because there could be something I don't even see, because I only know this one thing. I've only known this one thing for like 10 years, which is a third of my entire life. And I feel like I wasn't even alive until those 10 years started. And it's like, there's other possibilities for me outside of just being Ryan, the youth worker. But it's more importantly, one of the more important things I learned is, yeah, it isn't what you do, but who you are. Which is, it's easy to say.
Sure. Yeah.
But when you don't have a job and suddenly you
Mm-hmm.
haven't been doing what you've been doing, and that's where you got your worth, and suddenly I can just be Ryan.
Yeah.
Wherever, wherever God places me or takes me, or wherever I choose to be, whether it's a gas station or whether that's folding boxes, I have no idea. Or
Yeah, those are like, it's great when it's on a poster and you just kind of look across to it, but then like when it becomes like a real existential crisis, then you're like, oh, this isn't quite as fun anymore. You know, you're absolutely right. These are life lessons that I think some people never actually get to, like actually legitimately don't get to until maybe they move past whatever those stages are, from like with like retirement and mentoring. Then it's like about legacy, and it's like, oh, we gotta figure out what I'm leaving behind, kind of stuff. Like that's when these questions come up, but rarely are they coming up when we're like in the in the mud and the blood and the beer of it, just working away, doing our stuff, whether it's day to day, whatever, pumping gas or hanging out with whoever to help them move forward. Like it's something that we always need to be aware of, like dividing the differences between what I do and who I am is something that's, yeah, it's supremely important. Absolutely.
And if you don't know who you are, good luck with that, you know. That's another thing that needs to be figured out too, and that takes a very long time.
It sure does. It sure does. Okay, a couple quick questions as we
Sure.
start to wrap it up, and they're really simple questions, like nothing too deep at all. Why are we here?
Like in this room talking, the
No.
purpose of Pints with the Pastor.
Yes, that and the purpose of life. Like that's a simple question in 2 minutes or less. Why are we here?
Oh
What
man,
is this thing
what
that
is
we
the meaning
are?
of life?
Yeah, like why this and the experiences and you know, God created the heavens and the earth and then placed humans on them. Like what is this with pandemics and weirdness and internet? Like why are we here? So go. You've got 10 seconds to answer.
Wow.
uh, okay, maybe not. Maybe not 10 seconds.
Hmm. That's such a big question.
It is. And it's not meant to be a gotcha question by any means. So, you know,
Well,
it can be also, it doesn't
it's
have to be as philosophical or the best answer ever. It's something we're just throwing out.
well, I think I don't know why humanity, so to speak, like you say, it's absurd, but we are here. And so I think there is purpose and meaning behind that. Um, I would say that God is on giant mission to not just for me to take Ryan from where he was to this like point of experiencing life and freedom and renewal and restoration, but then also giving that giving those things in which we've experienced from God to others for them to also to take them and be like, I think that's the we're all in the same story. We've all uh and so I think the invitation from God is like uh extending that to other people, the hey, I'm on this mission to like bring people from this point to then experiencing all those things that I said, like life, freedom, peace, joy, all that stuff. And do you want to be with me on that? Do you want to join me on that? I don't know. That's kind of what I think it's about. And then I think life is good and awesome. And sometimes we miss that and take it for granted. And then there are
Mm,
systems in place that, like, even this whole thing that's happening, I was talking to somebody, I'm like, it's like the Wizard of Oz, like the curtains have been pulled back, and suddenly we see this is fake. It's all pretend. And people are like, I actually get to hang out with my family, and I can work, and I can do like live life. And I kind of wish that we would move into that direction, but we aren't
mm,
motivated by the same things. Our worldviews are all different, and so then they shape the world around us. And unfortunately, it's about myself and how I can take what I get out of this world and allow myself to be above everyone else. And I don't think that's right. And unfortunately has led to, I don't know, it just feels like we're all living in a play, and we've something happened and we have an opportunity to, I don't know, change our role, I guess.
yeah.
But I don't know if that answered your question.
You know what? I think that's the perfect question, like answer to the question.
Okay.
Absolutely. No, it's totally good. To the point where like I had another question around like if there's anything we would disagree about, but you know what? I don't even want to have that like
Well,
conversation because that's a perfect like that's kind of a great like wrap up, you
okay.
know. of this, unless you
Well,
have something that we're going to disagree about and
it's
we want to
really
get into the
silly and
weeds.
small, but you had talked about comic books and how you don't like DC comics.
Oh,
You,
see,
you
now these, wait, this, hang on one second.
so, and I
These
was
these are
like,
fighting words now.
yeah,
Yes.
you're all about Marvel and how DC is like there are a bunch of superheroes that can't. They're just like there's nothing that can beat them. What's the point?
Too
Kind of thing.
powerful. They're too powerful. Justice League,
Yeah.
too powerful. Yeah.
So I
I
don't know.
do I do like, so I like, are you're a DC fan over a Marvel fan,
I
or
I don't know if I'm over. I'm not somebody who has to be like on one side of a camp or another and be like hate the other side because of like I think there are things to enjoy on both sides of both camps. If we were like that, that would be very limiting to our our thoughts and our experiences.
Agreed. Agreed. So let me come over to your camp. The one thing that I thought was like, I didn't recognize as a teenager, right? It wasn't until later in life as a young adult. Uh, but I think what's really interesting about the DC worldview is that they took the Greek myths and brought them into, like, those were the superheroes, right? So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't all about mutations or whatever. It was really like, uh Aaliyah's reading Percy Jackson and the whatevers, the multiple whatevers, right? So
Sure.
again, you're the myths of gods and demigods and like all of those things all the way down.
Mm-hmm.
DC said, hey, rather than like trying to, we're just mutating a whole bunch of people, we're going to like say, oh, these are the kind of like, Hercules and the, Poseidon kids that are popping up.
Yep.
And these are the guys that are like, as Genesis would say, the men of renown, or whatever it was, the heroes of old, men of renown, or however that phrase goes. But these tremendous like people that were like awesome, and then they brought them into the world. So in that sense, I'm like, man, this is a fun narrative that they've done. But when it plays out, I get like angsty because, so the Avengers are on Marvel side, Justice League's on the other side. Justice League, even though has aliens involved, not just
Yeah.
demigods, they're just, you can't beat them. You can't beat Superman. You can't beat, like, you just can't beat them. And whereas like the Avengers, although Thor, would be a demigod
Mm-hmm.
kind of thing, um, and they had to like send Hulk to a whole new world because
Yeah.
he was just too powerful. It's like, we can't play with you anymore because you smash
Yeah. Why don't you
everything,
just
and
call the
we'll,
Hulk and he'll fix
yeah,
the
and it will
problem?
just fix the whole problem. So we gotta give you too much anger issues that you're going to destroy this whole planet, so we're going to send you to another planet. And then it becomes a little bit more manageable in the regards to all of that. So I don't know, I just, that was my bent, that's how I grew up. Yeah.
I think what I like is the fact that they are the way that they are. Like they are super powered, and yet their personality and how their personalities play into that part of it. So like what, like for example, Flash, he's somebody who is super fast and pretty much think insanely fast, can go anywhere insanely fast. But I like that, like of the character of like who he is and how that affects what he does, and how that impacts the world around him. In some ways, yeah, Superman, for example, can be boring. But then there's been some really good Superman stories because of the limitations that have been kind of placed there. It's like, how do you get around this person who can't be beat this way. What are I don't know. I find that really fascinating. My favorite is Batman, though. I like him probably
The
in the sense.
anti-hero.
Well, I think in terms of like taking horrible things that have happened to him and then doing good with it, good, beating up people that are mentally disabled.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, totally.
It
Yeah, that's
depends.
a whole nother. Yeah, why don't
Whichever
you
story.
pitch that to DC? Yes, like how people who don't have full capacity, he just beats them up. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but
sure.
I don't know. I guess that's why there are aspects of it that I enjoy. I like the Batman's human as well. He isn't super powered, but he's achievable technically. Anyone
Yeah,
could be him.
for sure.
Um, yeah, I don't know.
No, I like that too. Like I'm and fair enough. I think I'm tainted by a couple different things as well. I think also DC Comics, they required you to read more of the nuances around the character development.
Mhm.
And so there were just longer paragraphs or like thought bubbles going between that
Sure.
I'm like, no, fight. Like, no, just say you're dumb and go at it kind of stuff. And I think Marvel ended up like being more eye candy on that front. Like, we're just going to get to this fight. Like, you're going to do this? What? No, I'm not going to let you. The claws come out and then I'm going to like slash you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that. And so it goes to my learning disability, I'm sure, is why I went
See, now you can go a bit deeper and like really explore
for sure.
some of that
Well, you
as
can
opposed
ask me
to
why like Wolverine was like my like that's the one guy that I always collected and uh, loved to death.
hmm,
Um, and it doesn't make sense because he's like the ultimate like loner and hates people and all of that stuff. Well, that has nothing to do with me, like at
hmm.
all. So there's some things you can send in. Anybody who's listening to this, you can like, you know, who's familiar with like comic books, which means like one person else who's listening to this. You guys can, uh, you know, do some psychoanalytical theory as to why I like Wolverine or not. That would be really good. Anyway, listen, it's we've gone a good bit. This is
Yeah, I don't even
great.
know what time it is.
This is perfect. Uh, I think we've done well over an hour, which this is the best way to start, and sets the bar as to what we are. Anyway, thank you so much.
No problem.
Um, thanks for being open and honest and truly like not trying to do just here's the caricature of my story, but this is the legitimate things that I also felt through all of that. And I think, quite frankly, you know, that is one of the things that I like so appreciate about you. I know that
Thanks.
like in some sense you're like, oh, I feel like I have a hard time like sharing emotion or expressing emotion. I think the other side is like I think you're also very much willing to be this is what I'm thinking. This is honestly I'm just going to lay it all out and this is what you get and
Yeah.
I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that so much, and I think it is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It is. It is what I think all of us need a little bit more of.
I
And
agree.
so, yeah, thank you so much, and
Thanks.
love you so much. Love what you're doing. Uh, love who you are as a person, and just where God's taking you and what's moving you next, man. So thanks for this. Enjoy the rest of your good old innocent gun. And I
That's already
think,
gone.
okay. And I think uh, I got a little bit more. It's actually not that bad as it's warmed up. It's gotten a little bit for sure. So anyway, till next time, Everybody else who's watching or listening, because I don't know what we're going to be able to do for uploads. Thanks for spending a few hours with us. And we ask, hey, jump on to episode 2, 3, 4 if that actually ends up being a thing. All right. Thanks. Take care. Goodbye.